We're back with another edition of the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Emily Jashinsky, culture editor here at The Federalist. As always, you can email the show at radio@thefederalist.com. Follow us on Twitter at FDRLST. Make sure to subscribe wherever you download your podcasts as well. We're starting off today's show with what I believe is a Federalist Radio Hour first. We're joined by John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting, and he's going to indulge us in a discussion about his powerful new protest song, which you may have heard, but if you haven't, he's going to start the podcast by playing it for us. John, welcome, and thanks so much for bringing your music to the show today.
Thanks, Emily. I'm honored to be the first musical performance on the Federalist pod, and here is Blood on My Hands. Got blood on my hands. Got blood on my hands. And I don't understand what's happening. There's blood on these hands. They're still Americans. The left of the Taliban. Now how's that happening? Winking, blinking, can't you look me in the eyes? Willy Millie, tell me when did you decide this will defend your sacred motto now means never mind. Hands. There's blood on my hands. There's blood on my hands. The flag of the Taliban. Over Afghanistan. General Austin, is there no honor in shame? Can you spell Bagram without the letters in blame? Did Uncle Joe stick a drip in your veins? Hands. I can't hear her scream. If she's not on TV. I can't hear him scream. If he's not on TV. To every Afghan ally that we left behind, every child who won't know freedom, faces covered and blinders for this American promise, now shit in the fire. Hands. There's blood on our hands. Just one American. Asking what's happening.
It's really powerful. Thank you very much, John, for playing it for us. I want to start by asking you if you can take us behind the scenes of the writing process for this song. I know you've answered the question a million times of why did you write it, but can you tell us about writing the song itself and what that process was like for you?
Sure. It was kind of unlike any writing experience I've had. Certainly as a songwriter, you get angry, you get happy, you fall in love, and you write songs. But I had no intention of writing Blood on My Hands. And like like my other songs, I for the first time had a debate of putting it out,
Mm.
whether I should put it out. And for the first time, I had that kind of query. Uh, but after thinking about it, it was really personal because certainly when our 13 soldiers were killed, I was like so many of us, just despondent and angry, and felt it didn't need to happen. But the song didn't take shape till after our soldiers left. I had a friend, and this friend does amazing humanitarian work around the world. She's incredible, and I wish I could tell you her name, but she's actually overseas right now, trying to get permission to get some of our citizens out through various countries, which the State Department has shut down. We can talk about that later. But anyways, back in the day, when our soldiers left, she said, "I need some context," and I said, "Why? What's going on?" She says, "I'm organizing evacuations from Afghanistan," and it struck me that my friend was putting herself and her colleagues in danger, risking their lives to go rescue Americans we left behind. And I just couldn't believe we lived in that alternate universe. I just couldn't accept it. And that night I started writing Blood on My Hands. And then a few days later, I was coming back from my swim class, and I was kind of listening to some of the outtakes of our generals, General Milley and General Austin, and watching Secretary Blinken say, none of our allies are mad at us, when the night before, Parliament condemned us and Germany was going crazy. Kind of reminded me of Baghdad Bob. And I'm like, somebody needs to call out these people. Because personally, I don't know about you, Emily, but, our presidents can say some really dumb things, right? We've seen that in the last, this president, the last president, and we expect our presidents to be sometimes political and say things that we don't really agree with or understand. But I've always expected our generals to be the adults in the room. And I've always felt, boy, if something really gets bad, they will do the right thing. And they weren't. So when I was driving back from swim class, I'm like, well, maybe Blood on My Hands should recognize those who are running this political operation, not a humanitarian one. So that night I came home and I wrote the Millie lines. And sometimes as a songwriter, the lines write themselves. Doesn't happen all the time, but the Millie line about kind of dishonoring his uniform, the Blinken line about kind of being overwhelmed, the Austin line about, you're really telling me everything's went perfect when we abandoned Bagram. Those lines wrote themselves. I recorded it. Next day I called my daughter. I said, "Are you okay me putting this out? Because you may get some flack in college." I talked to my wife and my son, and they were okay with it, and I put it out.
What did the band think?
It's funny. We had a decision when we went on tour a month ago, and I was with my string quartet, and many of them are Broadway players. And I knew that number one, they didn't like the fact that I was criticizing the president. So I had a discussion with them because they were sharing that stage with me, and I explained to them that this was a moral message to me. I explained to them about where it came from, and they would hear me in the van talking to my friend running evacuations. I actually got roped into, doing work on the evacs. So they saw what was happening. But I said, I go, look, if you're not comfortable, I don't want you put in a place that would make you uncomfortable. And more importantly, risk you getting canceled. So what we decided on is at the end of every show, we do the regular show. They would leave the stage, and I would talk about Blood on My Hands, and I would play it. I think over time they understood where it was coming from, and they respected that. And when I said, look, if Donald Trump was president, I'd write the same song, only the names would change. I think they respected that. But it was a hard conversation. And it's been, I think, a hard conversation every night when I play it to an audience, many in blue states who probably initially are put off by the song. But, when I discuss it and I talk about where it came from and the moral message and the women and children and everything that's going on in Afghanistan, I think people listen. And I think this is one issue that I think it's different. It's different than it's even, it's different than the infrastructure bill. It's different than abortion. It's even different than the border, because we promised these people that we would protect them. SIV holders have a promise. Certainly, American citizens, that's by default. But soldiers, Afghan soldiers that fought with us, we told them we'd take care of them, and we abandoned them to the Taliban. So I think people deep down know that are moral failing. And I think this issue transcends others. And this is a very long answer to your question, but my band was okay with that arrangement. Some support it. I was down on my off day after playing the Birchmere in DC. We shot a version of Blood on My Hands down at the White House, and some of my band members participated in that. Some were not willing to, but that's what makes America great, right? It's like, but we all love each other, and we play every night, and we respect each other, and it's actually what things should be. Unfortunately, they're not in this age.
Yeah, and I think comfort with that kind of tension is really missing from the industry that you work in. It's sort of amazing how people have gotten so uncomfortable with the tension that should really be rocket fuel for great art like yours.
There used to be a day when artists were praised for protesting the man, and they took inspiration and wrote classic songs when they were upset with our government. We can go back to the 60s, 70s. You're very young, but you probably know Creedence and Dylan and Joan Baez, all those classic songs that were written because something was not right. And you would think in this day and age that with Afghanistan, the usual suspects who like to write songs about oppression and women's rights and gay rights would be all over Afghanistan writing songs. You'd think there'd be a Sun City concert for Afghanistan with, I'm not going to mention names, but many artists who the last administration really enjoyed writing songs protesting the administration. That's healthy, but we're not seeing that. And it's ironic that the music industry and the music media have frankly become the man, and they have little to do with rock and roll anymore, which is disappointing.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, what is your favorite protest song, or do you have several favorite protest songs?
I love all Fogerty songs, whether they're favorite songs or not. I really respect people who, back in the day, they were risking not their careers, but there was a risk to write those songs. And that's what I really respect about those back in the day. Today, it's such a bubble in the industry and the arts that everybody kind of writes songs, for their friends, and nobody disagrees and nobody challenges them. And when you try to challenge them, of course, we get to the cancel culture, the race, all the ists, they don't want to talk about what you say in the song. But I've actually, I've had some, I don't know if hope's the right word, but encouragement that when I play this song for an audience, people do listen. They don't stand up and walk out. They don't throw tomatoes. And afterwards, I have conversations with folks who may not agree with everything I say, but we have the conversation. And hopefully, again, with Afghanistan, it's not going to get any better. Hopefully, some artists step up. I'm putting together some collaborations with some Afghan artists to kind of keep Afghanistan in the spotlight and tell their story. And my goal is to bring in other American pop artists to participate in that. And I think they will. I think once we present it correctly, they will. I had a project called CD for the Troops 10 years ago, and initially not many artists wanted to join for political reasons, but then Melissa Etheridge said, "You got it, baby," and the dam broke thanks to her. And then we got a ton of artists from all sides of the political spectrum, and I think Afghanistan should have that, and I'm hoping that happens.
That's fantastic. And I like what you just said, that the dam broke when Melissa Etheridge jumped in. And sometimes it seems like that's just what has to happen. And a part of the song, I think, is nudging the dam to break open more broadly, further and further. I actually wanted to ask you about the response that you've received, maybe from the industry and also from fans, because of course conservatives have embraced the song and its message. But what have you gotten maybe from other people in the industry? And then when you play this song live, have you had an experience where you're hearing from people who are really moved by it? Because it's one thing to sort of tweet this out or to write an article about it, but to set it to music and lyrics like you did, have you heard that it's really moved people?
Yeah, I mean, your first question about the response from the industry, it's probably what you'd expect. I've had some friends and colleagues who seem not to want to be my friend and colleague anymore, which is fine. More disappointing has been the response of the music media. And, we sent the song out to 400 music kind of oriented media and got one response. And it was Voice of America. And even when the song went viral, and even when senators were tweeting the song, and even when politicians were talking about the song on the House floor, it's been kind of silence. And it's sad because, as I said, and if it was Trump, I'd probably be practicing my Grammy speech and be the toast of the town. And that's dangerous. That toxic tribalism is dangerous. That doesn't help our country. So from the industry, I think they've shunned it. I've actually tweeted, and I'm corresponding with one of the chief editors of a very important music magazine, sharing some Afghanistan information from the ground. I'm hoping that they get on board because, they're the stories, Emily, I'm sure you've heard the stories. One of the most popular folk singers in Afghanistan, Fawad Andarabi, was murdered by the Taliban in the first 4 days. And there's stories of artists being killed. There's a story about a wedding where there was music being played, that they killed musicians. And that is so extreme and outrageous. You would think the Rolling Stones of the world would have Fawad Andarabi on the cover of their magazine. Certainly 20, 30 years they would. They like to talk about women's rights and oppression and the freedom of speech for artists and how how toxic America is. But when we're complicit in artists being murdered, you'd think that'd be a story. So I hope they hop on board. They should.
Yeah. Now you've had to make this distinction that I think is important, and I've seen you say this, where the song is not about the decision to withdraw, but it's about our broken promises. Tell us why the broken promise is what motivated you to write this song more than the withdrawal. Like, how do you deal with that distinction in your own mind?
Thank you for asking that, because that's true. A lot of people say, well, you want to stay there for 20 years. To me, it's a different topic. And I do think there's certainly good arguments for withdrawal. I think there's probably becoming better arguments for not. But this song was really about the American promise. Who are we? Do we mean what we say? Are we the people who stormed the beaches at Normandy? Are we the people that brought the walls down? Is that America's conscience? When we say, you fight with us, you risk your life for us, you give your life for us, but we're going to protect you, your families, all of you who did that. And then we turn around in a weekend and leave you to be slaughtered and hunted by a terrorist organization. Is that who we are? And does American promise matter? Does no man left behind matter? Because if it doesn't, I think we should be very scared on more of a geopolitical level. Afghanistan is terrible. It breaks your heart. Every day you see a story, it breaks your heart. But what's happening in Afghanistan is not going to be the end of America. But if we have that attitude, and it transcends and applies to China with Taiwan, if it applies to Iran with nukes, if that's our same attitude and kind of philosophy, I really worry about this country. And that's where kind of that fear came from. I think the biggest emotion I had beyond just sadness for the personal atrocities and costs was fear that we have these generals coming out, basically doubling down on a president who said Afghanistan was an extraordinary success. That Orwellian kind of narrative, I think, which has kind of been built on this tribalism, where somebody can say that and feel they can get away with it, is incredibly dangerous. And we do that on both sides. Trump did the same thing, saying crazy stuff. It's similar to him saying, I won in a landslide. That is bad for our country. He did not win in a landslide. That doesn't help our country. And Biden saying Afghanistan was an extraordinary success, that doesn't help our country. So really fear for me for the next one really kind of drove the message. And then, of course, the lack of accountability. Nobody was fired. Nobody resigned. And I'll tell you, Emily, you asked me a second ago about the reaction of people in person. My mission actually expanded because when I wrote the song, I just wanted to keep the spotlight on Afghanistan. But when I started playing it, I did start having human reactions with people. And there was a moment in Annapolis, with COVID, we usually don't have meet and greets anymore. But in Annapolis, there's a little kind of club called the Ram's Head.
Oh, yeah.
You know the Ram's Head?
Oh, yeah. My cousin worked there.
Oh, really? Yeah. So as you know, it's literally, stone's throw distance from the Naval Academy. And there are a lot of military folks at that show. And I played Blood on My Hands at the end, and I was walking you have to walk through the audience. And there was kind of a line of veterans. One was this kind of big Afghan veteran. And he came up to me. He couldn't even talk. He was so emotional. You could see the shame, the pain in his eyes. His buddy said, yeah, he had 3 tours in Afghanistan. We just kind of hugged. And I'd seen thousands of emails from veterans saying, thank you for speaking in our pain. But I'd never seen the face and the eyes. And then there was someone behind him. And there was someone behind him. And then there were cadets. Yeah, they're not cadets, but the Naval Academy students who said, thank you for saying this. We all believe it, but if we said it, we're going to get expelled. So I saw firsthand how the song was kind of being a voice for those who feel they have none. And that's kind of become my mission now, especially with Veterans Day, this week, to be a voice and to do all I can for their wellness, because I don't think we're focusing enough on our veterans suffering, particularly our Afghan vets.
Yeah, and that's been something veterans is something that you've been working, that's an issue you've worked on for a long time. And I wanted to ask if you think that your politics have shifted or changed, or is it, as is the case with a lot of people I talk to, especially in arts and entertainment, that the country has shifted? And it's not so much that your personal politics have shifted, it's more that the parties have shifted and have sort of left people a lot of feeling, maybe politically homeless, but their sort of central values, their regard for the troops, their regard for our military hasn't changed. That's why it's so interesting to me when you say, what was really is behind a lot of this is seeing our generals and seeing sort of bold lies, and whether they're from Trump or from Biden, it's infuriating. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I do feel kind of a political orphan. Like so many, I appreciated some of President Trump's policies, but I didn't appreciate the messenger and some of his comments. And I have felt like I'm kind of, out on an island politically, which actually I think helps me with songs like this. And because I want to be fair, I appreciate, and understand people are going to take this song on the right and make videos of, Biden falling down the stairs and just like they would do on the left if it was there. But I want to come at this as a not a patriot, but as someone who understands the malignancy of tribalism and be as fair as I can, knowing that there's a bias in all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I try to listen. I emailed every one of the mainstream media anchors about this song directly. And I said, look, I don't want this to be a bullet in the culture war. Let's talk about, I know you agree with me. You've talked about it. Let's keep this out in front. But unfortunately, to date, they have not wanted to do that, at least, on the record. But yeah, it is a strange time. And I think we're seeing some signs, though, of the country rebelling against this tribalism and cancel culture, right? Of course, we saw Virginia, New Jersey. I think you're seeing artists a little, with Chappelle. I know you've done some podcasts on Chappelle, Joe Rogan. I think people are standing up, and it's more of a values free speech thing than even political thing. It's like, yeah, I mean, Chappelle, I'm sure we don't have a lot to agree with politically, but we agree that we should have a career. Barry Weiss, right? I follow all these liberals on Substack, not because I agree with them, but I want them to have a voice. I do think we're starting to see that. But the arts, you're the culture person on this Federalist thing. The arts has to lead the way. And one problem I've seen is that our politicians, especially on the right, our Republican politicians, very few of them understand the power of the arts. They love to hear their speeches. They love to build their Twitter following. And I also think they kind of like saying, well, nobody on the arts supports us. And, they're all a bunch of loony Marxists, because they like, not having to engage. But I think, my dear friend Andrew Breitbart back in the day would always say, politics is downstream of culture. You've heard it a million times. And it is. I mean, look what's going on in the country. Let's go, Brandon, right? Okay. It's a joke. It's probably moved the needle more than any speech by any Republican politician in a decade. Now, of course, it's sarcasm, which can be used, but then there's more serious songs. Blood on My Hands is never going to be that. But when you have Chappelle talking about it, when you have Joe Rogan talking about it, and I think that's going to give permission to other folks to come out and confront the cancel culture people. We have to confront them. I truly believe you're only canceled if you allow it to happen. So I'm actually seeing, I don't know about you, I'd be interested on your take on this. I'm starting to see a little hope, and I see that reflected in the electorate. I see that reflected a little bit in the arts. I see that reflect a little bit in the media. And maybe it's because, Trump's not president, but I do have some, and I see it reflected in the youth, of this country, college football games, who won't be told they can't say what they want to say.
Right.
What's your feeling on the whole thing?
I mean, you just described exactly what I think the process unfolding looks like, which is that it's a dam break, right? And I think it's happening slowly, and then it's going to snowball, and it's all going to sort of gush forward, and things will be much more open and looser, and people will be comfortable talking about these things. I think we see sort of cracks every single day, and it does come from artists, and it comes from you and Dave Chappelle and Rogan, who's a comedian. Like, this is really, really happening, and there are cracks every day. And everything you just said about the media is so interesting to me, because they are the bulwark. They're the ones that are keeping that dam sort of cobbled together. It's amazing. And your song is critical of the media. You have a line in it that really struck me, where you say, "I can't hear her scream if she's not on TV." Can you tell us about that line?
Yeah, you got it. That's the most important line in the song, because in America, we're so kind of addicted to our tribes and our media that if it's not on TV, it's not happening. And I actually was encouraged by the initial coverage of Afghanistan from the mainstream media. I think for the first time in a long time, they did their jobs. The first couple weeks showing the people falling from planes and the mothers throwing their babies over barbed wire. They did a decent job, but then the day our last troop left, it was almost like the wall came down and they were back to defending their team. It's important for us to do the best we can to keep it in the light. Now, conservative media is doing a pretty good job. I understand. I think the Biden administration was very smart in quickly moving to the vaccine mandates to take the Afghanistan off the page. They knew that would be a fight that the conservative media would chomp on, which they have, and it's kind of put Afghanistan to the side. But we have to do that. I'm going to be releasing this music video. I'm encouraged that you're seeing some movement in Congress. Joni Ernst, I've been working with her a lot on some things. And you saw the other day that every female senator in Congress signed a document to ask President Biden to help the women of Afghanistan. So we're starting to see bipartisan work on this, because I think everybody realizes this is different. So yeah, it's hard to break through that, but thank God for the Federalist. Thank God for conservative media. Thank God for talk radio. And I do think, again, I hope I'm wrong, but I think the worst is yet to come on Afghanistan. And I think blood on my hands will probably be more relevant a year from now than it is now. I hope I'm wrong, but from what I'm seeing, and the State Department not helping, and terrorists kind of basing there, and I fear that we'll be talking about this again.
Right, and I want to ask you to unpack that. That's where I was going to go next, which is, what have you, since you wrote the song and ended up working on these issues a lot in the extraction efforts, I'm sure you're one of the people who others were sending requests to and were helping field things. When you say you think the worst may be yet to come, and I definitely see the case for that, what do you mean, and why do you think that?
Well, again, I think the Taliban is trying to put a good face on it, though I get pictures every day of atrocities of children being killed, and women. I don't want to get into the details; they're just depressing. But I think it'll become a terrorist harbor again. The fact that the Biden administration initially said, well, ISIS and Al Qaeda is gone, was so absurd on its face. But I think we're going to see more terrorist activity. I fear that there will be some American citizens probably captured and killed at some point. But again, we basically gave free license to terrorists in a country with 40 million people. And how's that going to inspire all the bad actors on the stage? I think everybody's emboldened now. Everybody who's an enemy of America, anybody who's wants to do bad things to us, is emboldened. So who knows what it is? But I would like to say you're right. I did kind of get in the loop on some of these evacs, and have discussed and worked on evacuations with about half a dozen operations. And the one story we're not talking about, which I'm going to talk about at some point, is this in one way is Americans' greatest moment. And I say Americans, not America, but there are Americans who are doing the most heroic work, I think, since maybe World War II. There are so many veterans, so many private citizens who have quit their jobs, drained their bank accounts down in Afghanistan, some impersonating Taliban, risking their lives, evacuating people, women, children, American citizens, people who haven't slept for 6 weeks, organizing flights. As I said, my friends over there now, tens of millions of dollars of private money being spent to get people out. It sounds like a bumper sticker, but America has broken its promise, but Americans have not. And those stories will come out. And I think it'll give people heart. And it gives me heart that though our government has done the wrong thing, there are Americans who are doing not just the right thing, but the America that brought those walls down, the America that won World War II. So those stories will come out. And I'm sure you and the Federalist and Sean and everybody will promote those and tell those stories. Right now, we can't tell those stories because we don't want to compromise operations that are happening. But kind of in the worst of times, you are seeing the best of America. It's kind of like 9/11 reminded me all over again. And we will tell those stories.
I was going to say you're getting at a duality that's really interesting, which is there's something in the Biden administration's broken promises and then sort of lies and obfuscations that is a statement on America in 2021 and the American media in 2021 and American popular culture in 2021. At the same time, what you're describing as the fulfilled promise of Americans as opposed to America is a statement on the American people in a good way, and there's a bad and a good to that. What does it say when you sort of balance the two out about where we are right now, the United States 2021, where you have people that are still motivated to pour their blood, sweat, and tears into doing something good on a wide scale, and leadership that is not fulfilling serious promises?
I think we're on a tipping point. And I don't know which way it's going to go. I remember a few years ago, I was listening to Newt Gingrich talk on some radio show, and they asked him about, so what's going to happen with the culture war? How does it end? And he says, whoever wins. And that stuck with me. And I think he's right. And I think that battle is going on as we speak. And I think Afghanistan could be a crucial pillar in which way it goes, because I think it is clearly illuminated that many on the left who like to virtue signal and build their brands on being the compassionate ones, the ones who care for women, the ones who care for minorities, the ones who care for gay rights, that frankly, it's bullshit, okay? Because where is AOC? Where is the Democratic Party? We are seeing the greatest women's rights disaster in our lifetimes to minority women and children that we caused. And how many of them are standing up at those gates screaming for justice? So what we're really seeing is a lot of these folks on the other side who like to tell us how bad we are. It's basically a power play. It's to build their base, to build their brands. There's nothing underneath that. So I think we need to expose that. There will be people on the left who will understand and join the humanitarian mission. And I'm talking to some of them. And I'm hopeful, especially in the Senate. There's many senators on the left who understand Afghanistan. And that gives me hope. There's congressmen I'm talking to. Many of the folks funding a lot of these evacs are big liberal donors. So I think there is that kind of common consensus on something this big, but it is the culture war. And 5-10 years ago, I wouldn't put out this song. It wouldn't be worth it to me, but I see what's happening. And if every one of us doesn't stand up in our way, in your way, in my way, with your voice, people who on Twitter or social media or in their PTA rooms or in their lunch with their friends, if they're still afraid to stand up for what I think we know is right, especially on these issues, which are easy, then we'll lose. But if we don't, I think we'll win, because I think we have the moral conscience, the moral right on our side. But you look at history, small groups of people can change history. And we've seen to be intimidated. And look, Donald Trump didn't help that. He gave them a lot of ammunition to make all of us who are not leftists or Democrats kind of that stereotype. But I do think with Youngkin, and you're seeing some good candidates, we have to fight the war. We have to fight the culture war. And everything rides on it. Everything. The world. I wrote a record called The Battle for Everything once 10 years ago that 100 Years was on. I had no idea then that, just wait. It is the battle for everything right now.
That's actually really incredible to look back and think of how prescient that was. One final question for you, John, sort of along the lines of what you were just talking about. The right now seems to be the primary vehicle for fighting the culture war, which is very odd, for sort of restoring our culture of free expression and opposing political correctness and all of that good stuff. What advice would you give to Republicans or the conservative movement to be more effective at winning this?
You certainly need attack dogs, in any battle, right? But I think the way we really get out of our bubble is do what I've been seeing in my shows. I see it firsthand. As I said, when I asked my band to leave and I'm standing there and I said, I want to say a few words about this song I'm going to play. And I talk about the moral message. I talk about where I'm coming from. Most of my audience who probably voted for Biden, they listen to me. They don't all agree, but they listen to me. I think, those who like to yell and scream on the right, they move the needle, but they're countered by those who scream on the left, and they're kind of talking to the same audience. I am encouraged about, again, some of these bipartisan missions with Afghanistan in Congress, and I think we need to nurture those. And I play two roles. I find myself really criticizing the administration because they deserve it. I'm making this video. It's going to be honest, but it's not going to pull punches because I want to tell my worldview. But at the same time, I'm reaching out to those who disagree with me, and I'm doing all I can to say, hey, man, let's give me a voice, whether it's anchors at CNN or it's Democratic senators, in the Senate. I think we do need to have that reach out, and we do need to find common ground on these issues. And also, we need to call out the hypocrisy of those who keep telling us how bad we are, and we need to challenge them. I loved the Lieutenant Governor, Miss Winsome, who won some, and she'll win some more. I loved her calling out MSNBC and said, all right, Joy, let's talk. Have me on. Let's have this conversation. And when they don't, it exposes them. And when they do, it exposes them. But we need good messengers. We need to be humble. We need to understand that it's not all about us. And I think a lot of our politicians need to start worrying more about that than how many retweets they get, because I've learned a lot in the last 6 months about your industry, Emily, the conservative media industry.
I'm so sorry.
And I had no idea what a blood sport it was, and I understand people like to build their brands, but this is bigger than all of us. And so I would say stand up for your values, but make sure you continue to be humble and do outreach, because at the end of this, we're still one America. And there's a reason I wrote blood on my hands, because this is all of us. This is people that say, well, I didn't vote for him, it's not my fault. Hey, man, when Trump was president, it was us. When Biden's president, we are one America. And we have to recognize that it's the tribalism to a certain extent has to end. And maybe the arts can be part of that.
That's really well said. And I was honestly going to ask a follow-up about the ownership in the title and in the lyrics. I think that's is very poignant. John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting. Also, you should all go listen and stream and share his new song, Blood on My Hands. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Emily.
Of course. You've been listening to another edition of the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Emily Jashinsky, culture editor here at the Federalist. We'll be back soon with more. Until then, be lovers of freedom and anxious for the fray.